In my initial Hydroform video, I said the bike was usable, and that was the key word for that video. $199 got you a usable bike. Today's keyword is serendipity, and this is Project Hydra, Stage 1 upgrades to the Hydroform. I say serendipity because there were 3 strokes of luck that led to this build turning into what it is. It wouldn't be a KevCentral bike upgrade if I didn't use Ace Kit Jessica bars, and here they are with their 760mm of comfort. Cue Serendipity Instance 1. Ace Kit Jessicas come in 3 colors, silver, red, and orange, and I've bought multiples of each color over the past few months. It wasn't until I was fitting these onto the bike that I realized they had white graphics. As luck would have it, this works out well because they blend in well with the white accents on this beautifully finished Hydroform frame. And it turns out the stem on this bike is identical to the Hyper Carbon X's stem, meaning it perfectly frames the Ace Kit Jessica skull. Another Carbon X shared component is the lock-on grips. Now I ditched the ones off the Carbon X, but in this case these lock on well, so I'm going to leave them and see how long they last. Moving down to the fork, you'll see this is still the HPRS factory fork made by Zoom. Now it's still on the bike because I grew impatient waiting for parts to arrive, and it was also part of what led to Serendipity number 2. The Hydroform comes with single wall rims, and that's a no-go for me, and I was on the lookout for an affordable set of 29er wheels, and that's what took the longest to find on the XR Pro upgrade. And one day I was looking around and I saw another wheel set that I'd purchased for a different bike. This is a Weinmann 27.5 Plus wheel set with WTB Bridger 3-inch tires. Now these didn't fit the XR Pro, I tried. Not only do they fit the Hydroform, but they also look great. And now to Serendipity number 3, and for that we need to look at the eye candy of a full suspension bike, and for that let's go to the rear shock. Now it should be no surprise to any of you that watch my channel that I chose a D&M air shock for the rear. They offer lots of performance and they're cheap. In this case I chose the D&M 36RC, link in the description. This is serendipity because rear shock upgrades on a big box bike can be a bit of a gamble because there are no factory spec guides that tell you what you need. And on most builds like the XR Pro, there's quite a bit of adjusting just to get it to work. But here, the D&M I selected fits perfectly, so well in fact that I was able to use the factory mounting hardware off the original shock. But that's where I used up most of my luck, because for now I'm stuck with a factory 3x7 drivetrain because the 1x11 that I ordered is apparently on the literal slow boat from China. That's creating a problem because I want to ride these plus size wheels on this bike today. But the original components include a 7-speed freewheel. The new wheel set uses a cassette. So what to do when impatience is taking over? Well, I guess that's where there's one last bit of serendipity because I headed down to the local bike shop and asked for a 7-speed cassette. And this one has a hidden bonus. The factory freewheel uses the dreaded 14 to 28 tooth range. This one will open things up a bit with a 12 to 32 tooth. But because I have to keep the factory shifters with this setup and they have integrated brake levers, that means that for stage 1 I can't use the hydraulic disc brakes that I purchased for this project. At least not yet. So for now I'll be JAK super braking it. With its new plus size wheels, the wider bars, and that rear air shock, the Hydroform's starting to look the part of a much better bike. How does all that fare when it comes to the actual ride experience? Well, that's like a relationship status update in that it's a bit complicated. I'll say that it's mixed, but mixed with a skew towards the positive. But it's not bad, though it certainly could and will be better, so let me try to explain what I mean. First and foremost, the new wheel set, that's a huge win. Those plus size tires are traction hogs and they really smooth things out, especially considering I'm still on the factory fork. Unfortunately, because this is a 27.5 plus wheel set, the outside diameter is similar to that of a 29er setup, so there's no worries about pedal strikes or changing the geometry in such a way that it becomes uncomfortable to ride. And when those wheels are paired with 760mm bars, I feel pretty much at home in my position on the bike. That's the good of the new wheel set, and there is some bad. Remember, I intended this to be a 1x setup, and when I paired this bike with 3-inch tires, it means that there's a problem with the 3x drivetrain. It turns out using the low gear up front with those 3-inch wide tires, that's an issue. So instead of 21 speeds, I'm limited to 14, which is not ideal for this setup considering that I only have a 7-speed cassette in the rear with a limited range, even though that's improved. All that equates to lots of pushing when it comes to hills. Now, I'm a horrible climber anyway, and the loss of much needed low gears means I'm pushing a lot. But at least I have the air shock in the rear, which works out great with this frame. The ride, at least in the back, it's as smooth as bikes well over $1,000, so this is another big, albeit expected, win. The D&M I purchased for the XR Pro didn't come with a manual. This one did, and it turns out that the factory pressure chart is very close to the setting that I actually needed to be running for this bike. It's only about 3 to 5 psi off from where I ended up. So I lose on climbing, and that's due to the loss of gear access, but I gain on stability. That's from both the 27.5 plus size wheel setup and the new bars, and also helped out with that rear shock. I think I've made a big step forward so far with stage 1. At the very least, I'm more confident with the idea of upgrading the Hydroform. And I look forward to the gains I'm going to have when I can ditch the zoom fork for the air fork that I purchased. And also add those hydraulic disc brakes, because nothing helps me feel more confident in riding harder than being able to stop. What I'm about to say transcends bikes. This could be cars, motorcycles, really anything else that you upgrade, because there are some instances where you upgrade an item, you can tell it wasn't meant to have these parts. In the case of the Hydroform, I feel this bike is asking for even more. And whenever my NX group set finally arrives and I can put on that air fork, I'll be in the gear ranges that I need to not only help me get up hills better, but get down them faster. Let's talk about the issues that limits the current 3x7 drivetrain. If I'm in low gears on the back and low in the front, the chain rubs the rear tire. It barely makes contact, and I suspect that with 2.8-inch tires I could probably get away with this setup, but this is what keeps me out of the low gears currently. If, however, I'm in the second gear up front, you can see there's plenty of room between the chain and the tire, and this is about where the NX should sit, so I expect no problems with it and the 3-inch tires. And that's good, because I definitely want to keep these wheels, because I expect stage 2 to turn the Hydroform into a total beast and a bike that can easily replace both the Raleigh Kodiak 2 and my Nishiki Colorado. Let's also talk about the rear shock. This is 190 millimeters tall and it has 50 millimeters of travel, and I've seen a few viewers comment in the previous video on the Hydroform that they tried a different shock, and when they did, the pivot arm hit the seat tube. Now, I don't know what exactly they were trying, but to give you an example, I lowered the shock PSI so that I could easily allow full travel, and you can see that there are no clearance issues with the D&M and the available pivot spacing. For stage 1, I'll call the Hydro still in the usable classification, but serendipity has pushed it in the right direction. But based on what I've learned with these upgrades, when that NX does arrive and I can fit it and all the other parts, I'm exceedingly confident that I'll be looking at the new full suspension Big Box King. So stay tuned for stage 2, and once that's complete, we'll put it into a head-to-head shootout with the XR Pro. I should also note the total expense thus far. I paid $199 for the bike, and including the $199 and all these parts, the total so far is $496. So what do you think about Project Hydro Stage 1, and are you looking as forward to Stage 2 as I am? Be sure to comment below and let me know, because I love reading you guys' comments. I try to read each and every one and respond to as many as I can. And also, if you aren't already, be sure you subscribe and that you've got that notification bell active so you don't miss the final build of Project Hydro. Plus, I have lots of new bike reviews to come. Thanks for watching and have a great day.